Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My sister never worked a day in her life and had 3 children she can't support. My response, when my parents ordered me to buy her a house, triggered instant karma. My sister Lily and I have the same parents, but the way we were raised could not have been more different. While Lily was a planned and desired child, I was what they called an accidental child. My arrival in the world was not intentional. My parents had decided that they only wanted to have one child, and after Lily, they were convinced that their family was complete. Then, unexpectedly, my mother became pregnant with me. They didn't want another child, but they didn't believe in terminating the pregnancy either. They were also concerned about how their families and community would judge them if they found out they didn't want to keep the baby. In the end, they decided to have me, not out of love or a desire to expand their family, but because they felt pressured by their beliefs and the opinions of others. From my earliest memories, I have always felt like I didn't belong. My sister Lily was the center of their universe while I existed as a shadow. They never missed an opportunity to remind me that my birth was not part of their plan. They told me directly that I was not welcome or wanted in the family, and their actions reflected those words. They ignored me most of the time and rarely showed me any kind of affection. The only thing they seemed to value about me was the fact that I was a boy. My father used to tell me that at least as a son, I might be useful one day. He made it clear that when I grew up, my role in their lives would be to take on their financial burdens or to help my sister in some way. Both my mother and my father constantly drummed this idea into me. They constantly reminded me that, since I should never have been part of their lives, the least I could do was to work hard, earn good money, and make myself useful to them. They didn't see me as a child to be raised, but as someone who should compensate for the inconvenience of my existence by being their backup plan and provider in the future. That's how my life went. For the first 18 years, while my sister Lily was treated like a princess who could never make a mistake, I was treated as if I were insignificant. She was the golden child, and she got everything she wanted, while I was the forgotten one. For her birthdays, my parents would throw extravagant parties with decorations, elaborate cakes, and lots of invited friends. Meanwhile, my birthdays often went unrecognized. If they remembered, it was usually as an afterthought. While Lily received new phones or even a car when she turned 16, I might receive a simple gift card if I was lucky. The difference in how we were treated was obvious to anyone. I suppressed a lot of resentment because of this obvious favoritism. I couldn't express my feelings, so instead I channeled all my energy into my studies. It was the only way to get a modicum of approval from my parents. If I passed an exam or brought home good grades, I could at least enjoy a brief moment when they felt proud of me. That feeling, however fleeting, became my motivation. Lily, on the other hand, did not have the same pressure. She did not particularly excel academically, but my parents never encouraged her to try harder. They let her navigate through life with few or no expectations. When it came time for Lily to go to university, my parents announced that they had set aside a special college fund for her. They didn't want her to worry about loans or working part-time while studying. It pained me to discover that they had planned her future so carefully, when I doubted they had even considered mine. What made the situation worse was how she handled this gift. Instead of using the money wisely to get a degree, Lily dropped out of college after only 3 months. She told our parents that college wasn't for her, and that she was destined to be a housewife and mother, so she wanted to find a man with a good salary. Instead of questioning her decision or trying to guide her, my parents simply let her do whatever she wanted. Instead of holding her accountable, they facilitated her choices. Lily then used the rest of her college fund to travel around Europe, enjoying a carefree lifestyle and basically spending her time going from party to party. So it was that, less than a year after leaving college, Lily became pregnant. Indeed, my sister became pregnant after a one-night stand with a complete stranger. The man disappeared without a trace, and she had no way of contacting him. With nowhere else to turn, Lily returned home. You would think that anyone in that situation would consider terminating the pregnancy, especially given that the father was not present and she had no job, no savings, and no plans for the future. But not Lily. Instead, she accepted the situation as if it were some kind of blessing. She told us that she was happy to be pregnant and insisted that, although she couldn't fulfill her dream of being someone's wife first, becoming a mother was God's plan for her. What surprised me even more was how my parents reacted. Without hesitation or serious discussion, they agreed to take responsibility for supporting Lily and her unborn child. For them, the idea of becoming grandparents eclipsed everything else. They were excited by the prospect, as if this unexpected pregnancy was a source of pride rather than the consequence of irresponsibility. It didn't matter that Lily was unprepared or that the circumstances were far from ideal. All that mattered was the grandparents' label and the opportunity to present a perfect image to the world. Of course, appearances had to be kept up. My parents and Lily quickly concocted an elaborate story to explain her unexpected pregnancy. They decided to tell everyone that Lily had met a wonderful wealthy man while traveling through Europe and how they had fallen in love before she became pregnant. They thought that this would at least save her from the judgment and stigma that could arise from admitting the truth of a one-night stand with someone she barely knew. My parents were more concerned with protecting their reputation than facing the reality of their choices. As for me, I was expected to go along with their fabricated story. They wanted me to back up their story. If anyone asked questions or expressed doubts about their account, I didn't have much choice, so I kept quiet and went along with it. However, internally, I resented how easily they made everything up for her. Lily couldn't do anything wrong, even when her actions had serious consequences, while I was constantly told to be responsible and useful. When Lily gave birth, she had twins. I'm not a father, but I can assure you this. If one baby is already overwhelming, two are even more difficult to handle. It's chaos times two. And to make matters worse, Lily didn't seem to take her responsibility seriously. She did practically nothing to take care of her babies. Instead, my parents shouldered the entire burden. They fed the twins, changed their diapers, bathed them, rocked them to sleep. It was as if the children didn't belong to her, but to them. And as if that weren't enough, all three of them, Lily and my parents, expected me to pitch in whenever it was convenient for them. At the time, I was in my last year of high school, focused on preparing for college. My plans did not include staying at home any longer than necessary. I was determined to leave, so I just tried to keep a low profile and work hard at school. But obviously, for my sister, I was a free babysitter. I can't count the number of times they forced me to look after their children when I was a minor myself. She and my parents would constantly go out for dinner, to see a movie, or just to get some fresh air. And without consulting me, they would leave me in charge of the twins. I was a minor myself and had no experience with babies, but that didn't seem to matter to them. They didn't care if I had schoolwork, deadlines to meet, or plans of my own. Their expectation was clear. I had to help, whether I liked it or not. The worst part was during the night. Sometimes the twins would cry incessantly, keeping Lily awake. Instead of taking on her role as a mother, she would get frustrated, march into my room in the middle of the night and hand me her babies. "I need to sleep," she would declare, and then she would head back to her room without a second thought, leaving me with two crying babies, trying to figure out what to do when I was exhausted myself. I felt as if I was constantly being treated like a servant, someone who existed only to make their lives easier. I had no life of my own. Between looking after the children, dealing with the constant demands of my parents and sister, and trying to keep up with my schoolwork, I felt suffocated. My only hope, the only thing that kept me going, was the idea of going to university and leaving it all behind. Fortunately, when the time came, I was accepted to an excellent university. It felt like a light at the end of a very dark tunnel. For a moment, I thought that maybe my parents would be proud of me or support me like they had supported Lily. I even dared to hope that they had set aside some kind of college fund for me, just as they had for her, but of course they hadn't. When I asked them about it, their response broke me. My parents clearly told me that I was on my own. They explained that they had never planned or saved for my university education, because, according to them, I was never meant to be part of their lives in the first place. My father added that their savings had almost been depleted by taking care of Lily and their children, so there was nothing left for me. Once again, I was reminded that I wasn't a priority, that I was never seen as part of their plans. While they had done everything they could to support Lily, I was left to fend for myself. What hurt even more was my mother's reaction. Instead of encouraging me to continue with my education, she directly tried to convince me to drop out, just as Lily had. She told me I should be realistic and find a local job so I could start contributing to household expenses and bills. She made it clear that she and my father didn't want me to move out and go to university. What they really wanted was for me to stay at home and basically become their servant, for the rest of my life. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I had spent years feeling trapped and invisible, and this was my only chance to break free. So I found a way to make it work on my own. I applied for loans, sorted out the financial details, and prepared to go to university without any support from them. When I told my family that I was leaving, they were furious. My parents acted as if I was betraying them, abandoning them after everything they had supposedly done for me. Lily's reaction was even worse. She was furious that I wouldn't be staying to help her with her children. In her mind, I was supposed to step in and be a father figure to her twins. As if that was somehow my responsibility, she tried to make me feel guilty by saying that her children needed me and that I was being selfish by leaving. It was absurd. At one point, she even went so far as to try to damage my belongings just before my departure. She called it punishment for abandoning her and the children. Fortunately, I managed to stop her and retrieve my things. Despite the chaos and drama, I managed to leave that house for good. University was brutal. Balancing a full load of courses and part-time jobs, managing my loans was exhausting. There were times when I felt overwhelmed and wondered if it was all worth it. But I kept going. My hard work finally paid off. This year, I got a great job, one that allows me to support myself and live independently in a small apartment in the city. It's not fancy, but it's mine. And for the first time in my life, I feel free. For the last 4 years, my family has barely contacted me unless they needed something from me. And whenever they have, I have systematically refused to comply with their demands. I have stood firm in setting my boundaries, as I have worked too hard to escape that toxic environment, to let it drag me back in. Lily, however, has been relentless. She still tries to make me feel guilty about not visiting her children. She tells me how much they miss me, and portrays me as a terrible person for not spending time with them. But I see her intentions clearly. It's another attempt to manipulate me into taking on responsibilities that were never mine to begin with. Throughout all this, Lily has remained completely dependent on my parents for everything. She has never had a stable job, not even close. The few times she tried to work, it ended disastrously. She was either rejected during the interview process or fired after just a day or two because of her lousy attitude. She has always had this sense of entitlement, as if the world owed her something just for existing. To make matters worse, last year Lily became pregnant again, and this time she gave birth to another child. Her ex-boyfriend, who was the father of this baby, ended the relationship shortly after learning that she was pregnant. In his favor, he has at least been paying child support, but that hasn't stopped Lily from relying heavily on my parents for everything else. And through all this, my parents' unwavering favoritism has not diminished. They continue to believe that Lily is some kind of perfect daughter who can do no wrong, despite all the evidence to the contrary. They have shouldered the financial burden for her and her 3 children without a second thought. Earlier this week, my parents called me out of the blue. This was unusual because they rarely checked in to ask how I was. I knew immediately that there was an ulterior motive behind their sudden interest, so instead of engaging in pleasantries, I cut to the chase and asked, "What do you want?" My father didn't even try to deny it. He told me how he and Mom were getting older and starting to feel fed up and tired of living under the same roof as Lily and her 3 children. He mentioned how difficult it was becoming for them to handle the constant chaos and noise. Then he revealed the real reason for the call. They had been looking for a house for Lily, and apparently they had found the perfect apartment for her and the children. I told them that it was great news and suggested that they talk to Lily about it. I said it as neutrally as possible, but internally I knew exactly how the situation was going to develop. There was no way that Lily would agree to move. Why would she? She had an excellent arrangement living with my parents. They looked after her children all day for free while she went out with her friends. She had no incentive to leave a situation where she had no responsibilities and complete freedom to do whatever she wanted. My parents had spoiled her too much. Now they were looking for a way to transfer that responsibility to someone else. I could sense where this conversation was heading and prepared myself mentally for what was to come next. My father went on to explain in detail how he had investigated the rent of the apartment they had found for Lily. He admitted that it was quite expensive, but he also mentioned that when he spoke to the owner, he had found out that the apartment was also available for purchase. Apparently, the owner was willing to sell it at what my father described as a reasonable price. It was then that he told me directly that he needed me to buy this apartment for my sister and her children. I was stunned. For a moment, I thought I must have misheard him. Buy a house for Lily? In this economy? I don't even own a house. I live in a rented apartment, and I'm still trying to find my financial footing. But I was expected to take on the enormous responsibility of buying a house for my irresponsible sister. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the suggestion. No, I said firmly. My father began to argue that Lily could never pay rent on her own since she doesn't have a job. He explained how he and Mom would have no choice but to cover her rent themselves if she moved into that apartment. He then explained how they simply couldn't afford to do that because their retirement fund had almost run out and they didn't have much money left. I listened to his reasoning, but my position did not change. That's not really my problem, I replied frankly. My father did not let it go. He began to plead, trying to appeal to my sense of guilt and responsibility. He told me that I should think of it as a one-time favor for Lily, someone who has suffered so much as a single mother. She added that her children deserved a good future and that I had the means to help make that happen. But her words did not move me. I knew it was best not to let myself be drawn into her endless cycle of coddling Lily. I had worked too hard to build a life for myself, and I was not going to throw it all away for someone who had done nothing to help herself. No, I repeated without hesitation. My father sighed, clearly frustrated with me, but he wasn't going to give in. I had spent my whole life being treated as something unimportant, while Lily had everything handed to her on a silver platter. I wasn't going to be the one to clean up the mess they had created by spoiling her all these years. It was then that my mother intervened to say how, as Lily's brother, I should take some responsibility, and how she and Dad had looked after her for so long without complaining. I took a deep breath to calm down before answering. First of all, I said, you and Dad chose to look after Lily. That was their decision, and they accepted it because they wanted to, not because they had to. But that doesn't mean I'm obliged to do the same. Lily is not my daughter. She is not my responsibility. My mother was silent for a moment, but my father quickly took over, trying a different approach. Your mother and I have sacrificed so much for you, he said, his voice laden with exasperation. You wouldn't be where you are today in your career if it weren't for us. This made me laugh out loud. I couldn't help it. The sheer irony of his statement was almost too much to handle. Sacrifice? I asked, laughing. You really think you sacrificed for me? That's hilarious. Thanks for the laugh, Dad. All you deserve for your non-existent sacrifices is a parenting manual. That was the last straw. My parents were furious. My father's voice rose. He called me selfish and unreasonable. My mother intervened, echoing his words and saying how disappointed they were in me. They tried once again to urge me to reconsider my decision for the sake of Lily and her children. But I was not moved. I had heard this song and dance too many times before. I stood firm in my refusal. And the call ended with my parents practically begging me to reconsider. Since that day, my parents have been relentless. They have chosen to call me every single day, without fail, hoping to wear me down. It's almost ridiculous how predictable they are. Calls, sighs, and pleas in the hope that I will eventually give in. But their constant harassment only strengthens my resolve. Am I the idiot here? Update 1. As if the pressure from my parents wasn't enough, now I have a new headache to deal with. Relatives. Relatives who, mind you, have never bothered to ask about me, or even acknowledge my existence in all these years, are suddenly coming out of the woodwork. They started calling me unexpectedly, and not to offer support or ask for my side of the story, no. They are calling to scold me for being an unhelpful son. Apparently, my parents have been going around all the family spreading their twisted narrative. They have been telling everyone that they raised an insensitive son who refuses to help his family in times of need. I don't even know how they have the nerve to do something like this after everything they have done, or more precisely, not done for me over the years. It is absolutely outrageous that these so-called relatives, people I couldn't care less about before, suddenly think they have a say in my life, or in this situation. Where were they when I was struggling to get through university on my own? Where were they when I was drowning in student loans or working 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet? But now, because my parents made up some sob story to paint themselves as victims, these relatives think they can make me feel guilty into giving in. And, as if that wasn't enough, my sister has decided to join the pity party. She has taken a page directly from my parents' playbook and has been harassing me nonstop. I have stopped answering her calls altogether because I know it's not worth the headache, but that hasn't stopped her. She has been leaving me voicemail after voicemail, each one worse than the last. In these messages, she has called me every name in the book: selfish, heartless, ungrateful, and many more. She is trying to make me feel guilty by saying that, as the man of the family, it is my responsibility to put my feelings aside and step up for her. According to Lily, it is my duty to help her and her children as much as possible, regardless of how I feel about it. It's honestly ridiculous. What a right she has. She genuinely believes it's my job to fix the mess she's made of her life, simply because we share the same blood. But I've made my position clear. I've told her firmly, it's none of my business. Even though I may be a man, I'm not your man. I've also told her that if she's so eager to buy that house, then she needs to start taking steps to make it happen for herself. Get a job, I told her, and start saving. If this house is so important to you, find a way to make it work. I have made it clear that I am fed up with being her backup option, her safety net. I refuse to clean up her mess or take on responsibilities when she hasn't even tried to help herself. But, of course, she doesn't want to hear any of that. To her, I'm just the bad guy for standing my ground. She doesn't see the years of hard work and sacrifice I've put in to get where I am now. She just sees me as someone she can take advantage of. Now that I've said no, she's throwing a tantrum. Update 2. After dealing with weeks of relentless calls from my parents, my sister, and now even distant relatives who had no business interfering in my life, I decided I'd had enough. I wasn't going to keep quiet any longer. They wanted to paint me as the villain, so I decided to bring the truth to light. I turned to Facebook, determined to set the record straight and expose everything my family had put me through. In my post, I didn't hold back. I wrote a detailed account of my life from childhood. I described how my parents treated me as the unwanted accident child, never giving me the same love or care they gave my sister. I explained how they always favored her, spoiled her, and made it absolutely clear that my presence in their lives was an inconvenience. I shared how they only spent money on me when it was absolutely unavoidable, such as school fees or basic needs, and how I had to take out a loan for college entirely on my own. I even mentioned how they told me directly that there was no university funding for me because they had spent their savings on my sister and her children. I then went on to describe the situation with my sister. I wrote about how she became pregnant at a young age after a one-night stand, how my parents facilitated her irresponsible behavior instead of encouraging her to take responsibility for her actions. I shared how they made me take care of her children constantly, even when I was a minor, forcing me to give up my free time and sacrifice my own well-being for their convenience. I detailed how I finally left home, determined to escape the toxic environment they had created, and worked tirelessly to build a life for myself. I explained how I had been paying off my college loans and managing everything on my own without their help. Then I revealed how, despite everything they had put me through, my parents and sister had recently started asking me for significant financial help, a free house for my sister and her children, no less. I didn't sugarcoat their sense of entitlement. I laid it all out for everyone to see. Finally, I ended the post with a direct message to the relatives who have been calling and criticizing me. I told them that if they were so concerned about my sister's situation and felt so bad for her, they were more than welcome to help her themselves. If you are so interested in her welfare, I wrote, why don't you contribute to buying her a house? Give her some money yourselves and stop putting pressure on me. When I pressed publish, I felt a mixture of nerves and relief. I knew there would be reprisals, but I didn't care anymore. The truth needed to come out. To my surprise, the post had a huge impact in a few hours. My close friends supported me, flooding the comments section with messages of support and validation. Even some strangers got involved, encouraging me to stand firm and not give in to my family's toxic behavior. What really took me by surprise, however, was the reaction of some of my relatives. Some of them actually apologized after reading the post. They admitted that they didn't know the whole story and apologized for judging me without understanding what had happened. Since the post went public, I haven't received a single call from any other relatives. The silence has been wonderful, and I consider this a great victory. For once, I feel like I've taken control of the narrative and put my family in their place. They wanted to shame me, but now they are the ones facing the consequences of their actions. Update 3. My parents have finally found out about the Facebook post, and let me tell you, they are furious. They have been calling me nonstop for the last few hours, demanding that I delete it, but they didn't just ask me nicely. They have been threatening to sue me if I don't take it down. I told them they are more than welcome to try to sue me because everything I wrote in that post is true. Not a single thing I said was a lie, and I stand by every word. I reminded them that they had their chance to apologize for everything they have done to me, but instead they have chosen to keep pressuring me, to keep demanding things of me without ever considering how I feel. So I told them clearly, if they want me to delete the post, then they need to agree to stop talking to me completely. That's the only way I'll delete it. I thought it would be a pretty clear way of setting boundaries. They've had years to treat me with respect, and yet they have consistently chosen to favor my sister over acknowledging my pain. Now it's time for them to face the consequences of their actions. At this point, I hope that after all this drama, they will finally learn their lesson. Maybe this will be the wake-up call they need to realize that they can't keep treating me like I'm their personal backup plan. They need to back off and leave me alone. I've done nothing but try to live my life, and I'm sick of being manipulated and made to feel guilty in order to submit. So yes, we'll see where this goes, but for now, I'm standing firm. The truth is out there, and I'm not going to let anyone distort it.